Welcome back to Insects for Fun. Today, we're talking about carnivorous caterpillars, how rare this behavior is, the different strategies they use, and just how nature makes this wild phenomenon possible. Most caterpillars, as you know, are herbivorous, feeding on plant material. But in some extreme environments or under certain evolutionary pressures, a handful of caterpillar species have developed carnivorous habits. These meat eaters can prey on other insects, feed on snails, or scavenge for protein-rich sources. What's even more cool is that this behavior has actually evolved independently in several families, showing just how adaptable Lepidoptera larvae can be. We're going to start in Hawaii, where the genus Epipyropidae in the Geometridae family features some of the most famous carnivorous caterpillars. These guys are sit-and-wait predators and have evolved to use a combination of camouflage and quick motions to get their food. An example species would be Epipyropidae auricularis, which lies camouflaged along tree bark waiting for an opportunity to lunge and grab unsuspecting insects, like flies and aphids. They can pull this off using a lightning-fast motion thanks to their long, inchworm-like body. These caterpillars only have 4 suction cup legs, which are located on their back end, and the rest of the caterpillar is a long tube which can bend around leaves or behind their bodies to grab small insects resting at a comfortable distance. Now, you might be wondering why they would even have the need for catching flies, and I might have your answer. These caterpillars evolved in an island system which lacked other mainline predatory insects, such as praying mantids, and there are actually 2 non-carnivorous species which feed on protein-packed flower pollen and have a defensive ability to snap backwards. It is currently believed that these 2 herbivorous species represent the starting point for the caterpillars becoming true carnivores. Also, for anyone living in Hawaii, these caterpillars are native to the islands of Oahu, Kauai, Lanai, Maui, and the Big Island of Hawaii. I've actually seen them before during fieldwork when I lived on Oahu. The moths are incredibly small, and the life cycles for these carnivorous caterpillars are largely undocumented because trying to get a large enough sample size is incredibly difficult. Also, I would say that most people in Hawaii don't even know they exist because they're only found in native forests. Now, speaking of undocumented things, an official identification for a quote new unquote carnivorous caterpillar was just published in April by 3 people I worked very closely with while in Hawaii. The reason I say new in quotes is because the lead author had actually come across them back in 2008, but wasn't able to confirm their existence until now. That lead author is none other than my previous mentor and principal investigator from my master's program. This newly confirmed caterpillar is called the bone caterpillar because it covers its body with pieces of dead arthropods from spider webs. And yes, specifically from spider webs, because the adult female moths lay their eggs within the nooks and crannies near or in spider webs. The caterpillars then have to cover themselves with spider scraps to remain unnoticed by the spider, while they can sneakily steal leftovers. These caterpillars do not have a symbiotic relationship with their spider landlords. In fact, the kind of webs the caterpillars reside in seem to be exclusive to rock cavities and hollowed logs, which probably is because they need to stay hidden. The caterpillars are native to the island of Oahu, and so far seem to only exist within 1 mountain range, which is crazy. The other odd thing is that they have been found on webs made by introduced spiders, which implies they didn't evolve with a special spider from Hawaii. The moths belong to the genus Hyposmocoma, which is endemic to the islands of Hawaii and are known for making elaborate cases to cover their bodies as larvae. This actually segues us perfectly into the next caterpillar on our list, which is also a Hyposmocoma, but this one is known as a snail slayer. The genus Hyposmocoma likely combines Greek roots hypo, meaning under, and smokos, possibly from smoke or smoky. These names were coined in the 19th century when taxonomists often gave poetic or abstract names. Now, going back to the snail slayers, These caterpillars actively hunt snails, wrapping them in silk before eating them alive. They're kind of like spiders, except instead of waiting for insects to land in their webs, these caterpillars build webs around their food. The process can take up to 1 hour, and the caterpillars must act carefully to not spook the snail, because even though snails are slow, they can still clamp down on a surface and make it impossible for the caterpillars to enter. This works because Hyposmacoma caterpillars look like snails to the average person anyway, thanks to their habit of building hard-shelled cases. But Hawaii isn't the only place you can find carnivorous caterpillars. I mentioned a long time ago in my episode about Lycaenids that a number of these tiny butterflies have evolved to trick ants into letting their caterpillars into the colony. The result is a massacre of the colony as caterpillars feed on the ant larvae, while the ants inside have no idea what's happening. There's actually one species I didn't mention in my previous episode, and this one can be found in the forests of my East Coast North American listeners. The harvester butterfly, species Pheneseca tarquineus, is the only confirmed carnivorous butterfly species in North America, and happens to belong to the family Lycaenidae. However, this caterpillar does not target ant species. It's actually an aphid eater. This species is known to be particularly interested in feeding on woolly aphids, and they can complete their life cycle in 1 week. This, of course, makes it a bit tricky to actually catch them in the act of aphid eating. However, they do have a very detailed record of observations all across the eastern half of the United States, from Vermont down to Florida. They can also be found in the deciduous forests of Lower Canada. The butterflies feed on honeydew left from aphids and scale insects, and the females lay their eggs in aphid colonies. There are 2 generations in the north and 3 in the south, with most butterfly sightings occurring in the summer months between June and August. As for where exactly they're found, it seems like they prefer shaded areas near streams. But of course, to find them, you'll want to find the host plants of aphids, such as alder, silver maple, roses, and apple trees. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I have one more crazy caterpillar to talk about. This one is found in Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and China, and it feeds on cicadas. The moth belongs to the family Epipyropidae, which are known as being ectoparasites to plant hoppers. This specific species, known as Epipyropidae nawai, is the only one known to be a parasite for cicadas. And how they managed to get on one was largely a mystery, until a research team in China took on the task. What we now know is that the female moths can lay upwards of 200 eggs on plants eaten or used by cicadas, and the caterpillars are able to climb aboard. I believe there can be around 3 on one cicada, otherwise they would outcompete each other. As for how they find cicada hosts, well, we don't know. The obvious answer is to detect the loud calls of a male, but the fact is both genders of cicadas get latched onto, which means that listening isn't the method. As for how the caterpillars feed, they don't actually kill the host. They're like leeches and only feed until they're fully grown and ready to make their cocoons. Thankfully, they don't make cocoons on the cicadas, because that would be really bad for the cicadas, and who knows where the moths would end up. Once they're ready to pupate, the caterpillars safely detach from their host on a strand of silk, using spinnerets beneath their mouths. They then climb to the nearest tree branch to make a fluffy cocoon, and the adult moths emerge in early August over the course of about 2 weeks. The caterpillars look pretty sizable as well for a hitchhiker. Once they reach full size, their final instar is covered in a white powder like wax, and they're about chickpea width with the shape of a regular bean. At earlier instars, the caterpillars are reddish-orange. Now you'd think with such a weird caterpillar, the moths would look kind of strange too. But actually, it's a fairly ordinary looking moth. The adults only live for a few days, do not have a functional mouth part, and the moths also have another hidden secret. They can actually produce eggs asexually, which means they don't need to mate at all. While there are some other lepidopterans, such as the blue butterfly we covered before and the cuckoo moth, which have caterpillars that live in ant nests as, quote, brood parasites, unquote, the kind of ectoparasitic lifestyle led by Epipyropidae and its fellow Epipyropids join the ranks of an estimated 223 animal lineages that have independently evolved along the path of parasitism. And this is going to wrap up our episode on carnivorous caterpillars. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about some of the weirder larvae out there. And as always, make sure to rate the podcast 5 stars when you can. Thanks again for listening.